This is a picture of John Newton. Who was John Newton, you ask? John Newton lived a very interesting life from 1725 to 1807. Mr. Newton was a shipman. Now, Mr. Newton wasn't necessarily the best at what he did. As a matter of fact, at one point, he tried to desert from a ship he was on and ended up getting caught and was beaten in front of the crew. Many times, he was working on slave ships. Many of these ships would take supplies and things to Western Africa and use them to trade for slaves. In the course of one of these trips, Mr. Newton found himself on a ship that was in a terrible storm. Lightning and rain. The waves were getting higher and higher and higher and were beginning to overtake the ship. He didn't realize this in the beginning because he was asleep. When he woke up, he found water in his cabin down in the ship. And he cried out for someone to help him. The cargo flooded and filled the hole where the water was getting into the ship and overturning the ship. And the ship was able to float to safety. Now, this event, along with an event later on in Mr. Newton's life, where he became extremely ill, led him to the church. Mr. Newton saw these events as acts of redemption, where he was able to redeem himself from all the bad things he did in his life. And later on, he would even renounce slavery and the slave trade. When thinking back on these different events, from the ship to his illness, Mr. Newton wrote the hymn that today is the most translated song in human history and the most well-known hymn ever. Mr. Newton is the writer of Amazing Grace. So when you're listening to the song or you're reading the lyrics, remember that they were written by a shipman of slave boats, a gentleman who had no problem in the beginning trading human beings for cargo and for different things, who was later converted upon these different events, the ship being in the terrible storm and also his sickness. That's John Newton and Amazing Grace.